he shows us the spot. He still had a little blood stain. And when I saw that, I was like horrified. I could just see him. But then, like within 10 seconds, all of a sudden, this peace came over me. And I looked up at my older son who was with me and the detective, and I said, this is where he found his peace. Just a second. And I want to say, dying is not hard. Dying is not hard. It was his time. He laid down his final shavasana. So you don't have to worry about your loved ones when they pass. Like just switching out of this skin into the spirit form. And they're here. Dream world is really important. When you experience, especially a loved one, they're visiting you in the space where they can in another dimension.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hi everybody, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today, and I'm really happy to have my guest, Denise Roussel. Hello, Denise.
Hello. So glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. We had the chance to connect at the IONS conference, but I really was hoping to get to know you better, and there's just so much going on and so many people, and we didn't get a chance to talk in depth. So I am so happy to have you here. You have so much wisdom to share. I feel like I could take this talk in so many directions, but I think the important thing is people like to know more about the spiritual world, what is next, what this is all about. And so I'd really love you to share your story about your son, Cory, and how that has impacted your life.
Great. So just to preface the story is my son, Cory, passed away in 2014, and he became my spirit guide. But I need to start back and tell you from the beginning because, after death experiences are important, but the life and what led into it is equally important. So, Cory, this is always kind of this oddball sort of different sort of person. And in his teenage years, he started getting involved with alcohol and drugs. And oh my gosh, he completely just shook us up. I mean, it was very, very difficult experience. And so he kind of muddled along through rehabs and this, that, and the other. And he found his way to Austin, Texas, which by the way is where I now live. Yay, my little slice of paradise. So he found his way here and he found the ecstatic dance community, which, in doing so, he found community, home, sobriety. And he lived this year of this, just really endearing himself to the community, volunteering, just enjoying life and really having the space unlike he'd ever had before. Well, one day he was going on a group bike ride and he was coming through a red light and a car failed to yield on a left turn. So he rammed straight head first into the passenger window, and he survived it. Cut him from here to here and, fractured his leg and stuff. And turns out that even though he survived it, he wound up deciding he went into a tailspin after that. And he decided, I'm going to take this Craigslist ride to San Diego, where he lived homeless on the beaches and streets of San Diego. And after about 2-3 months, he's like, I'm tired. And I get this bright idea to go to Tijuana, Mexico to get some cheap motel and food. So there he is, and he gets approached by coyotes, those people that transport people illegally. And they're like, oh, we pay you to cross somebody across the border. It's only a ticketable offense. And he's got his wheels going. He's like, oh, I get to help somebody to come in. I get to get money to go home. Well, they didn't have that idea. They're like, we want you to do this as a career. It's a thing. He's like, I don't want to do that, but you can't tell those people that. So they say, you've got to do it one more time in order to get paid. And yeah, well, they set him up to get caught while they're over there. You know, he was the diversion. And it's not a ticketable offense. It's a federal felony offense punishable up to 3 years. So yeah, he calls me over there from the Federal Correction Center in downtown San Diego, tells me he's in prison. Oh my gosh. So he spent 4 months there. And during those 4 months, we put together this like 70-page memorandum, letters, 3-page letters from PhD people in the community, friends, family, everybody saying who Cory really was. We even had pictures of the accident.
And he did get a traumatic brain injury from that accident, correct?
Yes, he did. And that played a big role in this whole thing, and even all the way through to his death. So here he is, and we go to the courthouse, and the judge, he starts off and he says, I want to just commend the lawyer, which wasn't the lawyer, it was me. I'm putting together the most extensive memorandum I've ever seen in my career. And I would like to, I can see that the nature of the crime doesn't match the nature of the defendant. And so I see to give him time served, 4 months that he served, plus house arrest in Baton Rouge with his parents. Now, mind you, we're not so excited about that. And it was like 6 months. Oh my gosh, we were thinking 2 or 3 weeks. Oh no. And you know, he wanted to go back to Austin. That was where he found peace and sobriety and community. And Baton Rouge was a very toxic place. So here we go. And he's spending a year on probation. Well, he's actually was 3 years, but that first year, he tried. He really did try, but he was so angry and so resentful that the federal government was just imposing themselves, telling him what he could do, what he couldn't do, where he had to work, and that he couldn't move back to Austin. And so eventually he wasn't really doing anything illegal, but like a few months before he had failed a drug test. And so they decided they were going to revoke him. And turns out the week before that, I had been getting this stirring to pray for him to experience forgiveness. This is super important. Forgiveness is a portal. And so I asked my then husband, my sister, to pray. And on a Saturday morning, Cory woke up. And mind you, he'd been in 12-step programs. He tried, this forgiveness thing without much success. But he woke up days after we started praying, and he experienced the supernatural ability to forgive. And it was just came on him, and it put him in this unshakable peace. Nothing was going to shake him. 3 days later, the federal marshals show up. So he got all his stuff together, going, and he was like, they cannot harm me. He even smiled for the mugshot and quipped with the judge, and was just like very witty, because he was like, I already had this figured out. I am going to transmute my prison sentence into a time of personal transformation. So he got to that jail cell, and he began to, he turned it into an ashram, a temple, a college classroom, a psychotherapist's office, and he began to read. He read like 100 books that year. He began to write prolifically. He began to meditate for hours and start sharing with people. Well, he was writing me these letters. And in these letters, he was like, we're all connected. Oh, I was Christian at that time. I was like, oh, really? This is new information to me. And so I'm just listening. And he's sharing all that he's reading, and he's asking me like a bunch of times to read Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And I did. And so that was like July 2012. The next month, something happened, and I just decided this is the last straw. I am going to let go of everything I've ever believed. Good, bad, right, wrong, tradition, religion, and I am going to go to the I don't know. And I felt like I got flung off into outer space. And I did not know anybody who was doing that except Cory, and he's across the country in San Diego. I was in Baton Rouge at the time. So he became, we did not say this, but he became like my guru. And so I, listening, talking, writing letters, and etc. And, he spent a year in prison. And then after he got out, he had another year and a half. The last 6 months of his life were this very powerful blossoming time. And he was just imparting so much wisdom, so much truth. And one day, about 6 months before he passed, he called me up and he said, Mom, it is our due diligence. It is our responsibility to share our inspiration and truths by which we live. And so he started this project called the 7-Page Project. I don't want to go into why he called it that, but he was inviting people to document what's important to them and what is their truth. So he wrote his, I wrote mine, and it just was a document. And for him, he really enjoyed quotes. And so he wrote this quote that would be important to him, and then he would write a little expose on it. So I'm looking at that, and I'm like, oh, Cory's birthday's coming up. It was in August. And I'm like, I can make this into a little book. And turns out, I knew how to do it, like just from Office Depot. This is not like Amazon or anything like that at the time. I put the little quote on one side, and I put the little expose, and then I published them, put them together. And on his birthday, I'm like, here. And he's like, oh, I wrote a book and I didn't even know it. 2 months later, he passed. And we distributed over 500 copies of that book over the 2 memorials. So I'm going to shift gears and go into what happened with his death. Cory was planning to come to Baton Rouge from Austin, where he lived, and he was taking a megabus, but he wanted to spend a few days in Houston to visit his best friend, who was also named Cory, that he had met in prison and hadn't seen for a couple of years. So he arrived on a Wednesday, visited with his friend for a day or two, and then on Sunday morning, both of them were supposed to come to Baton Rouge. Well, Saturday evening, he just decided to stay up all night. And he's just used to that sort of thing. And then he was in downtown Houston, and somewhere at about 4:30 in the morning, and what happened is he got robbed. And what I deduce is that, when you're fighting over something like this, and then somebody lets go, then you go backward. Remember, he had a traumatic head injury. He hit the back of his head on a pole, and it started a brain bleed. But, it just wigged him out. He didn't start bleeding externally, but he was very sensitive to a traumatic head injury. And then he sees this parking garage. And this is Sunday morning. There's no security cameras or it's closed. So there's like this gate like this, but then on the side, there's like this space that if you want, you can jump down. It's an underground garage. You can jump down into the garage, which he did that. And then he made his way down. And by the way, he was kind of like out of it, okay, at this time, because security guard at the other building tried to talk to him, and he just is like, not in his right mind. And so he went down 3 levels, and there was this big yellow emergency phone, and he collapsed right in front of it because there's like this curve, and then he started bleeding externally. And then he crawled over about 10, 15 feet away, and he lay down on his back. I like to call it his final shavasana. And he died. And he wasn't discovered until 18 hours later. 2 weeks after he passed, we were going through to go to Austin, and we stopped in Houston, and the detectives arranged for us to go down into the parking garage where he died, which, by the way, there are no accidents, and a soul chooses their exit point, not a minute before, not a minute after. When he died, boom, he activated me. It was my awakening. It was if he was saying, I'm finished now. I'm going to the other side where I could be of more service. And so the place where he died is 1111 Louisiana Street. By the way, I was in downtown Houston. I live in Louisiana. 1111 is New Beginnings. And so it's like, I'm done. You're on. And the name of the building is Center Point Energy. You can't even make that stuff up. Anyway, so we get escorted down into this parking garage, which had been closed for a while, and because of the accident. And he goes through and he shows us the sequence of events, and then he shows us the spot. He still had a little blood stain. And when I saw that, I was like horrified. I could just see him. But then, like within 10 seconds, all of a sudden, this peace came over me. And I looked up at my older son who was with me and the detective, and I said, this is where he found his peace. Just a second. And I want to say, dying is not hard. Dying is not hard. It was his time. He laid down. It's like his final shavasana. So you don't have to worry about your loved ones when they pass. Like, you're just switching out of this skin into the spirit form. And they're here. And that's the other thing, is people are so grief-stricken when a loved one passes that they think they're gone. That's an impossibility. It's not that way at all. They're not only not gone, they're right there, right here, just in another dimension. The thing is that most people can't access that dimension and get support from their spirit guides because their frequency is so low. And the spirit being's frequency is so high, they have to lower their frequency to connect with us, and we have to raise our frequency. Does that make sense? Yes. So this moves me into my next after-death experience with Cory. I want to say that, first of all, because of our experience together and the depth of his teaching and his embodiment and my embodiment up until then, I was in a different position than most people. And so even though losing one of your own is one of the most traumatic experiences you can have, and it's so such an intense traumatic grief experience that it's not uncommon for people to not even ever really come to terms with it fully. Okay. But I was having this experience of being, totally grief stricken. And then I was having this experience of knowing that all is well and that, that there's something bigger going on. And so both were happening at the same time. So this experience up here was this gifts that I received almost immediately, despite the trauma. And that were the gifts of acceptance and perspective. And I knew that something greater was happening. And so this was just a part of the chapter of this book, this movie that we were writing together. And so And so, 5 days after he passed, he began appearing to me, and he came to me in a dream. And in the dream, and by the way, it was right before I woke up. This is really kind of a vivid dream, and visitations, dream world is really important. When you experience, especially a loved one, they're visiting you in the space where they can in another dimension. So in this dream, he had this snake coiled around his arm, and he had the snake's head in his hand, and he had the snake was like sparing his bangs, had his bangs spared. And I said, "Is it poisonous?" And he said, "No." And the implication was, it's not going to kill you. And he put that snake right in my face. I'm like, "No, Cory." And I woke up crying. And I knew exactly what he was telling me. He was telling me, "I need you to face your fears, Mom, because you have a big job ahead of you, and it's going to require a lot of courage." So from that day forward, I made it my life's mantra to face my fear, allow, and open to love. And so this was like the foundation of my healing process. And I had to be willing to say, I'm not going to keep running away from those things that I fear. And mind you, up until that time, I lived a very safe and risk-free life. But that is not why I came. I came here to create a new way of being based on this unconditional love that we are. And the only way to do that is by embodying unconditional love, which is what happened with me through this process.
I would love to hear stories about the experiences that you had with Cory. I know everybody listening too is very curious on how you connected.
Okay. I'll share a couple of ones that happened within the first couple of months, but I want to say that it's an ongoing experience. And of course, the first few months were even more important and more vivid. And there's something called the Bardo states where they actually are, it's kind of like a preparation for them to try to be fully in another dimension. And he actually told me on a couple months after he passed, I showed up in the dream, and I'm like, "Oh, you're here." I mean, I was like touching him. How are we going to explain this? And I've had that dream a number of times. Like, we'll dance. I'll kiss and hug him. I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's very, very real. But he told me, yeah, I'm allowed to be here for 30 more days. So, in this way. And so anyway, I'm going to back up in a few days, let's say a week after he passed, week and a half after he passed. It was a few days before my birthday. And a lot of these dreams happen in right there in that space right before you wake up, and it's like a lucid dreaming. Okay. And so he called me up on the phone, and I swear, I mean, I could hear his voice just like I could hear when you talk. And I'm like, Cory, you're here. And he said, I got you something for your birthday. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then he hung up. I'm like, what in the world was that about? And so meanwhile, a few days later was the Austin Memorial. We had 2 of them, and they were quite profound. We did some crazy stuff like Cory did. And so after the memorial, by the way, who's the facilitator for the ecstatic dance and a friend of Cory's as well as a friend of mine, his name was Oscar. I knew who he was, but I wasn't friends with him like I am now. He comes up to me, and he's got this scarf wrapped around his head like this. And he's talking to me, and he said, yeah, I was going into a store this week, and I decided to go into this store called 10,000 Villages. He said, I'd never been in there before. And I went over and I saw they caught my eye with these scarves. I had just bought a scarf for myself. I did not need a scarf. And he starts looking at the scarf, and he's like, oh, this is my scarf. And he decides to buy it. And it wasn't cheap either. He said, this scarf reminded me of Cory. So he takes the scarf off, and then he's like, puts it on my neck. Oh my gosh. I had just started crying as he said, I got you something for my birthday. And he did. Yes. So, I was having so many experiences, and I want to talk a little bit about this with people, because, when you start having people that cross over to the other side talking to you and communicating with you, people think you're crazy. And they start gaslighting you. And then it's also super taboo for some cultures. You're not supposed to be talking to dead people. Okay. Well, guess what? I had to come to a certain point where I decided, am I going to let other people's idea about me direct my life? Or am I going to say, y'all can have your reality, but I'm going to move on down the line and get the support that I need and want and enjoy from my loved one? And by doing that, I lifted off the limitations and was able to connect more deeply. So if you're out there and you're like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm crazy. I've had this near-death experience. I've had this after-death experience. Oh, and guess what? You're just going to have to decide for yourself that you're going to do what's right for you. And that's going to lift off the limitations that you have around going past that and expanding more into your true essence. It's going to be so nice. Yeah, you're going to be gaslit by your family and your friends. That's part of the deal. But you got to be brave.
Fear is the foundation of what many of us have been taught. And I think it is very scary for people to examine their beliefs because they've been told they shouldn't.
Exactly. And, we're all iterations of love. That's who we are in different versions. So, yeah, I'm giving you permission to let go of that story. There's something wrong with you, or that somebody else is going to judge you, or that it's wrong to connect with spirit world in general. Yeah. Love is love, and it's not confined to physical form. It's not. Consciousness is not confined to any form. It can come in any way. So, meanwhile, our family went to Antigua, Guatemala, a couple months after for New Year's afterward on a trip. And we're at this Airbnb, and I'm sitting at the table with across from me is I have cousins in Guatemala, So my cousin's wife, Esmeralda. My daughter, Bethany's on the left. And then Landon, my older son's on the right. And then back there is the kitchen. And then on beyond the kitchen is, the door to go out to the patio. So my cousin Fernando goes out to the back patio door. He opens the door. And then all of us at the table look up at each other. We could smell the smell of roses. I mean, so strongly, so purely. And I had already heard about this phenomenon before, but I wasn't going to say anything because they thought I was crazy. They didn't believe me. So my daughter tells us, well, what is that? Do y'all smell roses? What is that about? And my cousin's wife says, well, some people believe that it's a source of a spirit being like Jesus or Mary, or your Cory in spirit form coming to visit us. Oh, of course my son Landon was like, oh, there's probably a gardener up there on the roof or something like that. I'm like, okay, all right. And so she looks at me and she said, you need to go out on that patio and spend time with Cory. So I did. And I stepped out there. It was so amazing and so beautiful. And the stars were all lit up. And I just had a little camp out time with Cory with his roses smell. When I was going out to the back patio, my husband, my then husband, was like, he said, what is that? I said, it's roses. I don't want to say it. I go out to the back patio. Anyway, so the next day, my cousin Esmeralda, cousin's wife, she said, I realized what was happening and I want to tell you what I saw. And she said, when Fernando opened the door, she said, Cory came in the back door. He stood behind me, went around to Bethany, went around behind me, and did that thing and then went back out on the patio.
Wow.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes. I want to tell you about one more story before we move on. And that is, it was one of those early morning things where even though it was morning in the dream, it was nighttime, but I felt like somebody rang my doorbell. And I've got like upstairs or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go down and answer the door. Now, this was in my dream, but it felt like I was doing this. And so I go down to the door. I open the door. It's nighttime. There's a light on. And Cory's standing there. He's wearing like this blue shirt. And I'm like, hey, you're here. He's like, yeah. And he's smiling. He's holding this blue cylindrical light. It's maybe about 12, 16 inches. And he says, watch this. He took the light and he put it inside of me and lit me up. Is that crazy or what?
Oh, it sounds amazing.
Yes, yes.
And you continue to have these types of experiences with Cory?
Yes. The wisdom and the embodiment has been imparted to me, so I'm not relying on him as much as I was in the before. I'm like, I totally need help. And I want to make a distinction here. This is a really important distinction. That is, Cory wanted to make sure that I was not venerating him, putting him up on a pedestal. He is not my guru. He was training me to be my own guru. He will not tell me the future. He will not tell me what to do. He's my guide. He's empowering me to come into my essence. And it's understandable for most people when they lose their loved ones that they want to connect with them. Yay! And that's perfect. And actually, that's a big part of the work that I do. I'm a guide for people going through this grief process, and particular with people who have bereaved parents. And part of my passion is helping parents and people who've lost their loved ones connect with their loved ones on the other side. However, that is not my first priority, because you can go to a medium and it's great. I encourage it, but I'm not teaching them to go to a medium to get connection, teaching them how to connect themselves fluidly, naturally. And the way you do that is you have to raise your frequency to be able to heal yourself to a point where you can raise your frequency. They'll lower their frequency. You can connect fluidly. So, we're not jumping straight into this connecting thing. We're just going naturally as the relationship unfolds with myself. Yeah, we're not going to put the cart before the horse.
You have come up with, I guess you'd call it a process of something I believe you now teach to other people, and how they
Yes,
can, I think, become more still and more present. It's called
yes,
S.P.A.C.E. Explain that to us.
yes. And before I do, I want to say that everything that I'm going to talk about is in this book, Creating Soulful Space, a Practical Guide to Self-Love. This is the result of this healing process through this traumatic grief journey. And by the way, I've already published 16 books. That's just like one of them. But this one is like super important. And I do want to say something about that. Writing was very, very important to my healing process. And so much was coming to me that I needed to document it. But like in the first 4 years, I had published 10 books, grieved the loss of a son, walked hundreds of miles on the Camino 3 times. I created art, all this stuff without being busy. And the reason is because I learned how to be present. When we're present, we tap into our essence as presence, our divine, limitless nature. That's why it's so important to be present. And so we start living this life, and it's graceful, it's fluid, it's not striving, it's not hard. We're not limited by our human resources, logics, and abilities anymore. We're able to flow from our true essence. And you can do all kind of stuff very easily that way. So let's talk a little bit about this space process. And that space process, space word, is really going into our essence, okay, as space. Let me just clarify again. When it comes to presence, that means that we're connecting ourselves with all that is, all time, all space, all beings, everything, everyone, across dimensions, etc. This is our true essence. You can call presence, it's synonymous with love, with joy. It is who we are, our divine essence. So I'm inviting you to listen and to integrate these things into your life and watch and see how special and how much your life will transform. And everything that I share is so freaking simple. It's so simple. It's so practical. But most people aren't ready for simple. Most people want to do it harder. It's got to be hard. I got to meditate longer. I got to do more yoga. I got to go one more ceremonial modality to get the monkey off my back. Well, that's not how it works. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this acronym. Stillness, presence, acceptance with authenticity, connection with compassion, and empathy. And briefly, I'll talk about stillness. Stillness is so important because we got this nervous system that's so overstimulated. Well, that's how it's going on in the background all the time. Wow, especially if you've been traumatized. So it's no wonder you're just like in survival mode all the time. Well, you can't do anything when you're in survival mode except just barely live. Let's say if I had this glass of water and I put some sand in it and I stirred it all up, well, guess what? You couldn't see through the glass. But over time, all that sand's going to come down and then you can see clearly. So there we are with the reason why it's important to create a stillness practice. And so I like to think about it that I would invite you to to start a practice that is so natural. It's like drinking a cup of coffee or brushing your teeth, and you don't even think about it. You just do it. You don't complain. It's part of your life. Okay. So I like to encourage people to use an app called Insight Timer. And on this app, you have this space where you get this little starting bell, ding. And then you have a space where you can put the time. If you haven't meditated before, I'm going to say 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's the max. And then there's a little place for some ambient music. That bell and that ambient music is super important. And that's because those sounds go beyond your nervous system, beyond your brain, and they put you in a parasympathetic response to relax. And so we're so worried and in our heads most of the time that it's just a little life hack to help it to be easier. So first thing you wake up in the morning, we're sitting there in the chair with our feet planted and we turn the little thing on. And guess what? We're not going to worry about not thinking. Oh no, we're not going to worry about that. You can think about anything. Think about the fight you had with your spouse. You can think about the grocery list. You can do whatever you want to do. You know, if there's a full-blown tantrum going on, you could just sit there and watch the show. It's okay because it takes a while for your nervous system to settle down for the sand. And so we're just trying to sit still and have to let it settle and to watch it. So that's stillness. Now, how simple is it? Let me ask you this. Is it easier to stay up all night worrying about something or to sit in a chair for 5 minutes and sit still?
Well, my brain would say sit up all night and worry about things.
I'm not going to lie. The first time I went to a yoga class and they asked you to lay in Shavasana and just lay there, I thought, you got to be crazy. I'm not going to lie. But you do it the first time and it's like, oh, this isn't so bad after all. Especially because there's no rules and you can't do it wrong.
I like that idea because if you are just sitting and at least initially you're not saying, oh, I've got to clear my mind, because that's what I do. Then I guess if you're just in the habit of sitting 5 minutes every single day, eventually it becomes a discipline, which you then can use that time to clear your mind.
Yes. And I think I wouldn't use the word discipline. I'd use the word practice because we're going back to the idea of making yourself do something when
Correct.
You say discipline. And also just let go of your agenda. Let things happen naturally.
That's so hard to do.
It is hard to do, but the more you practice anything, the easier it gets and the better you become.
Right.
So getting used to never forcing yourself to do a single thing and to being gentle and kind with yourself, that's coming from love. So if 5 minutes becomes easy for you, consider adding a few more minutes. And at some point, building up naturally where you're never forcing yourself to go to the next level. And you may want to ask your higher self, what is my end point for daily meditation? Maybe it's 10 minutes. That's it. Go with that. Maybe it's 20. Maybe it's 30 minutes or an hour. Few people are called to meditate for an hour a day. And it's okay if you want to, but build it naturally. And so next thing, is presence. We talked a little bit about the importance of presence. And here's the thing. We humans, we so used to being back there in the past and over there in the future that we are not naturally being present. So something that somebody taught me way early on in this journey is to, throughout the day, to think about your breath. And just take a breath and look around and notice. It's like bringing yourself back to this moment. And so maybe you're going along and eating lunch and you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to think about my breath. Oh, you're going along, you're driving the car. Oh, I'm going to think about my breath. And so it's just a wonderful tool. And I'm not talking about any kind of like breath work or anything. I'm just like grounding into this moment with a breath. How simple is that? Is that doable?
That is very doable.
So authenticity, acceptance with authenticity. So acceptance is like the doorway. Most of the time when we're feeling bad, it's not actually the thing, the sadness or the grief or the guilt or the shame. It's our resistance to it. And so what we learn to do is take the wrongness out of the feelings. It's kind of like this. We as people have been trained as humans to like lock away all of our feelings. We started doing this since we were little children because people wouldn't have us otherwise. So we just locked away all of our sadness and anger and anxiety into the basement of our hearts. Now we may be at a point like I was where those feelings are kind of like coming and knocking at the door like we want to come out. We want to be seen, felt, and heard. We want to be loved and accepted exactly as we are. And so, in order to love someone that you haven't been so open to and you can't stand, you got to build a friendship with them. And you also have to take the wrongness out of that and begin to understand that these feelings have suffered greatly on your behalf. And instead of trying to avoid and distract and numb yourself and say, I don't really feel sad, because you don't want to feel sad, you start getting honest. I do feel sad. It's back there. I do feel super anxious. It's back there, but I don't want to think about it because I don't like it. So basically, we take the wrongness out of it, and then we start connecting with ourselves. And the way we do that is just like slowly begin to allow yourself to say, hey, sadness, you're allowed to be here. And then, hey, sadness, I have a few minutes here. Come here and tell me all about it. And then you learn vocabulary around how to talk to yourself. That's the empathy part. And that's a whole other thing which I cover in this book. And the last thing I want to say, and this is super, super important practice, and it's called audio journaling. So with audio journaling, and this is something you can do at any time and anywhere when anything feels a little off and you don't really know what's going on. You pick up your phone, turn on your audio memos, and you just start talking. And you might cuss, and you might call people names and all this stuff and cry, whatever. Directly afterwards, you listen to the video, the audio. So what's happening is you're giving space for these feelings to be seen, felt, and heard. They come out with full expression. And then when you listen back, equally important, directly afterwards, it's your higher self listening with non-judgmental presence and compassion. It's like, oh, look at there. Look at there. Okay, I'm here for you. It's okay. Tell me all about it.
That is a very interesting practice.
You become your own therapist. Sometimes I can do 5 audio journals a day.
A lot of it, I'm sure, is just getting that out. And once it's out and said, people feel better.
Yes, that part's super important. But don't stop there. You are the love sent here to be with the parts of you that are upset, So you begin to identify as that love. You're no longer just Heather in a body in a story. You are love itself. Listening to Heather in a body in a story. And holding her in your loving embrace. Whatever arises, love that. But when you're able to love and accept whatever feelings arise as they arise, that's how you transform your fear back into love, your sadness back into joy, your anxiety back into peace, your anger back into your power and your passion. But it's a process, and you don't go from here to here in one fell swoop, and you certainly don't go there because you just learned this mentally. Oh no, no. You're not going to fool yourself. Come over here and tell me all about it because I don't like you. Go away. Oh no. You're not going to do that thing. You got to be genuine.
I assume that as people practice this, those that are grieving somebody that they've lost, it helps ease some of that pain that they're going through.
Absolutely. Because the reason I can sit here and talk to you about Cory with such acceptance and joy, I would never change a thing. I feel more connected to him than I did when he was in his body. I absolutely do. The reason I can do that is because we're not separate. I no longer feel separate from him or from love or from life. It's not just for people who lost a loved one. It's pronounced because those people have been traumatized, but it's for everyone. This process is how we can just come back into the love that we are, which is why we volunteered to come.
I have really enjoyed this conversation. I know my audience is going to want to learn more about you and your book. I will have a link to that, and I'll put that in the description. But again, your book is going to go over some of these things that we just talked about, plus a lot more, I imagine.
Yes. And also I want to encourage anyone, especially people who have gone through the trauma of losing one of your kids, to reach out to me. I'm very accessible. My email, my link tree, my contacts are there in the description. And I want to have a conversation with you. I want to find out what's going on in your world. I want to be here for you. And so, yeah, let's do that. Reach out. I'm here.
Denise, one more time, tell us the title of your book.
Creating Soulful Space, a Practical Guide to Self-Love. And it's available on Amazon in ebook and print. And my website is creatinganewearth.org. So I have so much good stuff there. Yeah, creatinganewearth.org. I highly encourage you to give it a peek.
We have covered so much today, and I know people are taking away a lot from this conversation. But if there's one thing that you really hope people walk away with, what would that be?
You are love. You are the most powerful force that exists. You are here to remember who you are and why you came. And nobody can do your job but you. You are a fractal version of the love that we all are. Do not get discouraged. Do not give up. Be brave. Be brave. Be strong.
Thank you so much, Denise. I'm so glad we had a chance to talk today. I have loved getting to know you. You really are a treasure to so many people that are hearing your messages.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. What a blessing.
Didn't you just love Denise's energy? I was so impressed with how she has evolved, going through some of the hardest things that we can imagine going through, losing a child, and yet evolving through that and finding joy and finding purpose and growing spiritually because of what she went through. And of course, Cory helped her both before he died and then also after. That was so fascinating to me to learn about that. And I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Was it just that story that stood out to you or some of the other things? I mean, I really found it was fascinating that she let go of all of her beliefs. Now, I think that's pretty hard to do, but I do think what we all can do is just step back for a minute and just examine what we believe and make sure it really feels right in our heart with us, and we're not just following something because somebody told us to follow it. So that I thought was a really interesting aspect. If that stood out to you, please let me know in the comments. And then also, of course, she has this process that we can all do to help us be still. She calls it space. And of course, she described that. So I really enjoyed that as well. I also just really enjoyed getting to know her. Denise is a lovely person, and she is putting out so much good in the world. I will have information in the description about her, and that includes information on her book and then connecting with her, that sort of thing. And actually, she has lots of books, not just the one that we talked about. So you can find that in the description. The description, to find that, look below the title, look for the word more, click on that. That's going to open up the description. You can also find links there to all of my past episodes that I've had. I wanted to mention some other things that you can find there in the description. And one of those is a new conference that is coming up. I will have information there for you. And it's called the Truth Tellers Conference. And the subtitle is NDE's Miracles and Power of Truth. This is going to be in Dallas. It's going to be in mid-February, February 20th and 21st. And the speakers are going to be incredible. If you haven't heard these people speak, you may want to consider this. At least check it out. Jeff Olson, Scott Drummond, Vinnie Tolman, Barbara Bartolome, and Cara Marlene. I've had all these guests on my show, and wow, they are all just incredible. They have amazing stories, and they're really great speakers. So I just encourage you to take a look at that. I think it's going to be just an absolutely fascinating conference. I also want to say thank you to all of you that are supporting me. There are new ways that you can support me. And again, I'll have information in the description, but you can become a member. And thank you to all of you that are members. I have many of you at the supporting level. And then also a special shout out to a super supporter, and that is Andre Coleman. Thank you so much, Andre. I really appreciate your support. Thank you to all of you that support me in many ways. It might be a membership, it might be buying merchandise, or it might just be coming here week after week and writing down some sort of a comment, even a simple one, like a comment about Bubbie or about my guest, or if you just want to say I made it to the end. Anything like that is really important. And another way many of you support me is giving it a like and sharing it with friends. All of those are really, really helpful to me. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. I do have more great guests coming up, so please come back and come looking for me. Go to Beyond with Heather Tesch. Do not count on YouTube to send me out. I do have a new episode each week, and I've got tons of past episodes that you can find there as well. And again, there is a link in the description if that is easier for you. Thank you so much, everybody. I do hope I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.